The pain came first, dull and distant, like thunder rolling across a faraway horizon. Commander Jack Morrison's eyes cracked open to unfamiliar, ceiling panels that curved in geometric patterns no human architect would design. The light was wrong too, softer than regulation medical bay illumination, tinged with a purple hue that made everything seem dreamlike. He tried to move and immediately regretted it. Every muscle screamed in protest, his body a catalog of injuries he couldn't quite remember earning. His right arm felt particularly heavy, weighted down by something warm and surprisingly soft. Jack turned his head slowly, fighting through the fog in his mind, and found the source of the weight. A hand, slender and covered in pale blue skin, marked with silvery patterns that resembled frost on a window, was wrapped gently around his own. The hand belonged to someone sleeping in a chair pulled close to his bedside, her head resting on folded arms near his shoulder. She was unlike anyone he had ever seen. Her features were humanoid, but distinctly alien, with high cheekbones and a delicate bone structure that seemed almost fragile. Her hair, if it could be called that, was a cascade of silvery white filaments that shimmered even in the dim light. 2 small ridges ran along her temples, disappearing into her hairline, and her ears tapered to gentle points. Jack's breath caught as fragments of memory began to surface. The ambush in the Kepler sector, the explosion that had torn through the hull of his ship, the desperate scramble to reach the escape pods, then nothing but darkness, and the vague impression of voices speaking in languages his translator couldn't parse. He tried to pull his hand away, not wanting to startle her, but his fingers wouldn't cooperate. They were locked around hers with surprising strength, as if his unconscious mind had claimed her as an anchor to the waking world. He tried again, more carefully this time, and the movement finally roused her. The alien woman's eyes fluttered open, revealing irises of deep violet that seemed to contain their own light. For a moment, she looked confused. Then her gaze focused on him, and her expression transformed into something between relief and embarrassment. Her cheeks darkened to a shade of lavender that Jack instinctively recognized as a blush, even across species lines. She sat up quickly, reaching for a device on the nearby table, but Jack's hand tightened around hers involuntarily. She paused, glanced down at their joined hands, and then back at his face. A smile tugged at the corners of her mouth, and she made a sound that could only be described as a chuckle, musical and light. "You never let go of my hand," she said, her voice carrying an accent that lilted in unexpected places. The translator implant in Jack's ear rendered her words in English, though he could hear the original melodic language underneath. 3 days you have been waking and sleeping, and each time I try to leave, you hold tighter." Jack felt heat rise to his own face. "I apologize," he managed, his voice rough from disuse. "I didn't mean to keep you here." "No apology needed," she replied, settling back into her chair, but making no move to reclaim her hand. "I am Nurse Lyra. You are aboard the medical vessel Century, and you have been my patient since the rescue ships found your pod drifting near the debris field. I am glad to finally see you properly awake." The name meant nothing to him, but her tone was warm and professional. Jack tried to focus through the remaining fog in his mind. "How bad is it?" Lyra's expression grew more serious, though she didn't release his hand. "You had severe decompression injuries, broken ribs, a collapsed lung, and significant trauma to your head. We were uncertain if you would survive the first night. But humans, we have learned, are more resilient than our medical databases suggested. We're stubborn," Jack said, attempting a smile. "It's kind of our thing." That earned another chuckle from Lyra, and Jack found himself unexpectedly pleased by the sound. "Yes, your species' reputation for stubbornness has proven accurate. Your body fought very hard to heal. I have spent many hours here, monitoring your recovery, ensuring your vital signs remain stable during the critical periods." 3 days, Jack repeated, processing the information. "You've been here for 3 days?" Lyra's blush deepened slightly. "I have taken short breaks, of course. But you seemed to rest more peacefully when someone was near. And when I attempted to leave after you first grasped my hand, your distress indicators increased significantly. Dr. Venn suggested that perhaps the physical contact provided comfort to your recovering mind, so I remained." Jack looked down at their joined hands again, noticing details he had missed before. Her fingers were longer than human proportions would suggest, and the silvery patterns on her skin seemed to pulse very faintly with an inner light. His own hand looked rough and scarred by comparison, marked by years of military service and close calls that hadn't quite killed him. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for staying. I don't remember much, but I think maybe some part of me knew you were here." Lyra's violet eyes met his, and Jack saw something flicker in their depths, an emotion he couldn't quite name. "You spoke sometimes in your sleep. Fragments of words, names of people you cared for. Once you said thank you, very clearly, though your eyes never opened. I believe you knew, even then." "I dreamed," Jack admitted, surprised to find the memories surfacing now. "Of floating in darkness, but there was a light, and a voice telling me it wasn't time to drift away yet." "Was that you?" "Perhaps," Lyra said softly. "I spoke to you often. Dr. Venn says there is evidence that unconscious patients can sometimes hear and be comforted by familiar voices, though yours was not familiar to me when we began. But 3 days of conversation makes even a stranger's voice familiar, I think." Jack realized he was smiling, really smiling, for the first time since waking. "What did you talk about?" Lyra looked momentarily flustered. "Many things. I told you about my homeworld, about the plants that grow in the crystal gardens and sing when the wind moves through them. I described the medical theories I am studying, which I am certain bored you terribly, even in unconsciousness. I read passages from a book of poetry that I keep for difficult nights. And I told you that you had to keep fighting, because I had worked too hard to lose you now." The honesty in her voice struck something deep in Jack's chest. He had been a soldier for so long, moving from battle to battle, that the idea of someone fighting so hard to keep him alive felt almost foreign. His crew had been his family, but they were scattered now, possibly lost in the same attack that nearly killed him. "Your crew," Lyra said, as if reading his thoughts. "We have accounted for 17 survivors from your vessel. They are aboard other medical ships in the fleet. You were the most severely injured, which is why you were brought to Sanctuary. Our facilities are the most advanced." Relief flooded through Jack, loosening a knot of tension he hadn't realized he was carrying. 17. That's more than I hoped for. "Your species protects each other well," Lyra observed. "The reports say you stayed at your station until the last escape pod had launched, even as the ship was breaking apart around you. That is why you were injured so badly." Jack shrugged with his free shoulder, immediately regretting the movement as pain lanced through his chest. "That's the job. You don't leave people behind. A noble principle," Lyra said, "and one that nearly cost you everything. But you survived, and now you must focus on healing. The road ahead will not be easy. Your injuries will require time and rehabilitation before you can return to full duty." "I've got time," Jack said, then added with a slight grin, "especially if my nurse is as dedicated as you've been." Lyra's blush returned, deeper this time, and she looked away briefly before meeting his eyes again. "I am assigned to your care for the duration of your stay aboard Sanctuary. So yes, you will be seeing much of me. Though perhaps now that you are awake, you will not need to hold my hand quite so tightly." Jack glanced down at their joined hands and experimentally tried to loosen his grip. His fingers reluctantly obeyed, though he found himself strangely reluctant to let go completely. "Old habits," he said. "Sorry if I made your job harder." "You did not," Lyra assured him. In truth, it was comforting for me as well. I am still new to nursing, and you were my first truly critical patient. Knowing that I could provide even this small comfort helped me through some uncertain moments. They fell into a comfortable silence, neither quite willing to break the connection, despite the awkwardness of the situation. Finally, Lyra gently squeezed his hand. I should inform Dr. Venn that you are awake. He will want to examine you and assess your progress. But I will return shortly. I'll be here, Jack said, finally releasing her hand. Not like I'm going anywhere. Lyra stood, smoothing her medical uniform, and Jack noticed the fatigue in her movements now. 3 days of watching over him had clearly taken their toll. Lyra, he called as she reached the door. She turned back, her silvery hair catching the light. Thank you, really, for everything. Her smile was radiant. You are welcome, Commander Morrison. Rest now. I will return soon, and perhaps this time you will be awake enough to hear the rest of my stories. As she left, Jack lay back against the pillows, staring at his empty hand. The warmth of her touch lingered on his skin, and for the first time since the explosion, he felt something other than pain and loss. He felt hope and the strange bee